Mountain is not in the shopping center itself, it's just by itself, like Penny's, I mean, you don't consider it,
And it's on a freestanding parcel.
and it's, okay. J.C. Penney is way too many.
You're proposing the 50 to 75,000. We reduce that to 4. Is that correct?
No, I'm proposing that for retail stores greater than 50, freestanding retail stores greater than 50,000 square feet. Drop down to something like 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, something like that.
Just to quantify it a different way might help some people. It would reduce the required parking by 1/8. I mean, just to give somebody more of a
Yeah,
visual.
Yeah.
You see, I was confused too where you're coming. All we're looking at is the first item retail stores. Everything else is 2.5 per thousand, and we have 4 spots per 1,000 for that one. And all you're asking is, do you want to do something between 3.5 and 4?
Large retail
Yeah, I have no
stores.
problem with going with 3.5.
Okay.
Because you're right, every one of the others are 2.5, so make that one 3.5. And that would be, how'd you figure that out? What did you say? 1/8.
Right, yeah.
Like I said, as we see modifications being made to buildings and stuff, one of the problems that we run into at the staff is we'll tell people on the front end, don't design your site so tightly that you have absolutely no flexibility for future modifications. And everybody does. And then they come in and they're upset because we're saying you don't have any modifications. So, we'll actually help.
Is Gander Mountain one of these?
They actually didn't design that tight, but with the modifications that they're making, they do need less. They will. They're going to take out some parking spaces, and therefore they're adding square footage and taking out some taking out some parking spaces.
They don't feel that that's going to limit them.
Oh, they've got
Right,
they
yeah.
got parking up
Yeah,
there.
so that's not a problem. Ready to move on to discussion and public hearing on the 2010 Annual Development Report. I think Mark is going to take over that one.
Okay.
Maybe they're bringing in some different lines.
Be a little bit different presentation. It's just a PowerPoint presentation. Basically follows the document pretty much all the way. And certainly at any point, if you have any questions, feel free to
Mark,
let me know.
this is something you
I'm
do
gonna have to-
annually with, to let us have this information.
Yes.
You
it
update
is.
this.
Yeah. Okay. Again, if you have any questions at any point, feel free to interrupt me. But yeah, this is a report that's given every year, and for comparison purposes, we try to follow a similar format every year. We look at what we call key development activity indicators, and those are listed there on the screen. You know, obviously, development activity has been affected by the national recession and the generally slow housing market that we've seen, particularly in the past couple of years. But actually, in Farragut, we've been able to maintain a, you know, surprisingly modest level of growth, actually, compared to a lot of other communities who've really had virtually nothing. We've been actually fairly fortunate. The first indicator that we look at is building permits, and a building permit in this document is it just involves a new principal building. We, of course, issue building permits for all kinds of other things, like additions, renovations, you know, gas mechanical permits, all kinds of other things. We had 46 building permits for new principal buildings last year. One thing that we've seen with the kind of the downturn in the new housing market is we've seen a lot more homeowners coming in with additions and renovations, you know, sprucing up their existing houses because they figure they probably can't sell it, so I might as well, you know, add another bedroom. And actually, those really, believe it or not, those consume a whole lot of staff time because you're dealing oftentimes with somebody who's really not familiar with the code. So it really, even though new housing is slowed down, our guys have been fairly busy with those kinds of building permits. If you look here, this is basically just a graph through the year, and you can see the activity last year was most prevalent in the spring, and that's often the case. But and it, you know, kind of slowed down. It was fairly slow the rest of the year. In terms of the use, Farragut continues obviously to be, you know, dominated by residential construction, even in the downturn in the economy. We've had 32 permits for single-family detached structures and 8 for single-family attached. That's actually a little higher proportion of attached in relation to detached than what we have seen historically. This is a 10-year, you know, kind of comparison of building permit activity with the different categories of land use, and you can see obviously the past 2 years we've definitely been affected by the recession. We did have 8 more permits issued last year than we did in 2009 for single-family detached dwellings, so that was pretty good. And really, the early indications this year, of course, it's very, very early, but we've been fairly busy so far early in this year. The second indicator we look at in this report is subdivision plats. There's 4 categories of those. You have the final plat, and that's basically where you have 2 or more new buildable lots, or you're creating new public improvements. It's what is recorded at the Register of Deeds office downtown. Obviously, that activity has slowed recently from the national economy, and also in this area where there's an abundance of already existing platted lots. So, you know, we've got probably over 600 lots that are available to be built on. So, you know, you're obviously going to have a slowdown in people coming in with additional final plats, unless you're like the cottages at Price Farm and you're tapping into some unique market. So that you could actually maybe see some new activity in, and that's the third point there. Single-family attached developments have maintained some consistency.
Is that 600 scattered, or is it concentrated in
Well,
a
a lot
few?
of it's in the bigger developments like Bridgemore, Sheffield, you know, a lot of the southwestern part of the town. Bridgemore accounts for a lot of that just by itself. But as Ruth mentioned earlier, you know, it took Fox Run maybe 20 years to build out. So, Bridgemore's even bigger than that. So there's more than just the economy and the number of lots that are platted. It just takes time when you have such a large development to ever get built out. Preliminary plat's the second category, and those are really just construction plans for public improvements. We actually saw you really can't go anywhere but up in comparison with 2009. So 2010, we actually had 3 preliminary plats, which was good. Yeah, so, we're improving. Same way with concept plans. Those are the less detailed plans that are typically associated with the large multi-phase developments like we looked at earlier tonight with Sheffield, for example. We had one plan in the past year that involved 102 lots. That was over at the cottages. And again, an improvement from 2009 where we had 0. So maybe we're on the upswing here.